Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your hurricane outlook and discussion. It is now Tuesday, July 21st, 2020, and all of a sudden the tropics are starting to get more active. So let's get right to it, shall we? First, let's take a look at this. This is really fascinating in my opinion, and a great starting point for our discussion. This is the total precipitable water, and this is a product from the University of Wisconsin's tropical cyclone site. And this shows us the amount of water, the precipitable water in the atmosphere. The oranges and the reds are generally the more moist areas all through here. This is all lots of moisture. These blues all up in here, even some of the lighter colors of blue that get intruded into here, those are more dry areas, and so you would suspect out here in the west, the Rocky Mountains, very dry. Up in Canada, very dry air, and you have the Saharan air layer that comes off of Africa from time to time. But down in the deep tropics, this very rich moisture plume helps us to identify what's going on. And there's a few very important things. First, notice, and let's just take the most obvious. This is Invest Area 99L right there. It's nice and curled up. This is eventually going to be 90L if it's not already over here going through the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And this system may try to develop into something. This could be eventually 91L. These are your pouches or pockets of energy, whatever you want to call it. These are the tropical waves. And boy, this really shows up very well. And what's really important about this is the size of some of these. So look how small, relatively speaking, 99L is versus this very large, higher amplitude system that is currently rolling off the coast of Africa. That's Cabo Verde right now, Cape Verde, the Dakar area, Senegal, and our system over here, not quite as wound up, but yeah, fairly large in its size. But 99L is pretty small, relatively speaking. And that is a big reason why it is able to survive right now, because this right here is a push of Saharan air, drier air, lower dew points, lower humidity, that's trying to catch up with this system, but because of its small size, it's not able to wrap this in and self-destruct. And that's really important. We'll have to see how that all plays out. But this really helps us to know what's out there. And this is an important feature, this is an important feature, and this is an important feature. Here's another tropical wave there moving through portions of the Northeast Caribbean now with little fanfare associated with it overall. So let's go to the National Hurricane Center, and this is the Atlantic Basin. Here's our system south and west of the Florida Keys, 40% chance of development. And we're going to talk about this, and since this is much closer to land areas, you would think that this would have, the most attention, but I'm not real concerned about this. This is very important here for a lot of reasons, because one, it could impact the islands over here, probably the Windward Islands with time, but also because of where it is located and the time of year it is. We really need to focus in on that and understand the importance of the system. In the Eastern Pacific, real quick, so we don't ignore that, Douglas, maybe down the road a piece, a concern to Hawaii for rainfall and moisture and rainfall, I guess, whatever. Not because I think this is going to be a hurricane threat to Hawaii, but, possibly some increased trades, maybe a few extra gusty winds from here, from time to time here and there, and the increased threat of rainfall. So the big island of Hawaii and elsewhere along the chain there. You guys watch this, I'll watch it too, and we'll talk about it. Not going to ignore you because we're talking about the Atlantic Basin all the time. But certainly the Atlantic is the area that we are watching the closest right now. But we don't want to ignore our good friends out in Hawaii either. So there's Douglas right there, and it's going to go on to become a hurricane. And I say finally because the East Pacific has yet to create a hurricane this year. It just shows you the conditions out there are just not as favorable this time around. Here's our system moving through the eastern Gulf of Mexico in vicinity. Here's the other tropical wave that's fairly convection-free. And then just entering the picture is 99L. And as we slide over to the east a little bit more, we can see this better. 99L right here. There's that Saharan intrusion coming in to the north. But the small size of this will keep it from self-destructing. So let me do a little bit of a demonstration for you and kind of explain why the size of this envelope of energy is helping it to survive. So in a room like my office here, if in one end of it there was some smoke, some kind of a foul smell, whatever, but visible smoke, maybe somebody lit an incense candle right over here or whatever, and you take shallow breaths, that smoke's over there, and you're just like, because you don't want to smell it, you're less likely to eventually ingest that as long as it's not being blown over to you. Does that make sense? As it slowly diffuses out that smoke area, you take shallow breaths, and you avoid it, right? And so this is the same kind of thing with our tropical system here, 99L. The larger it is, and it's breathing in and breathing out, the breathing in part is the inflow. The breathing out part is at the upper part of the atmosphere. We call that outflow. The breathing in is what is incredibly important to this system. The more it breathes in, the more of that dry air it would ingest. And there are instances where wind shear can inject that dry air, and you really don't have a choice. If somebody were to blow that incense candle towards me, there's nothing you can really do about it. That's just logical. So the small size helps it, because as those thunderstorms grow, they are breathing in. That's the inflow, right? We talked about that. And it's not pulling that inflow, the air, from that Saharan air layer just yet. So this counterclockwise turning in here, we'll look at it on a zoomed-in satellite picture in a moment. That's the boundary of the Saharan air roughly right there. It's not ingesting that, and that's hugely important to the survival of this system over the next 2 to 3 days. All right, so there's my little breathing exercise example of how this works. So the more it breathes in and it encroaches on that Saharan air, the more it could self-destruct. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. Now, our other system over here, much more disorganized, and we're going to talk about this more tomorrow in terms of its, there's not much with it right now. We'll certainly look at it from the computer model's perspective, but, it's just not anywhere near as organized as 99L, and then, boy, this tropical wave coming off Africa has a lot more oomph to it, I think, than our system here in the Eastern Gulf. But we're going to examine them, one at a time here. So let's look at it from the perspective of the vorticity. All right, so first, just so you know, that's the tropical wave from yesterday that moved in. There it is there. This is the system moving in through the Gulf. This is that other wave I was telling you that doesn't have much with it at all. And then here is 99L down here. This is the leading edge of that Saharan air. And then this represents a lot of energy about to come off of Africa. So our systems are easily identifiable with the vorticity signature. And if you go back and look at my videos, I can't remember a specific date for you, I'm sorry. But there's been plenty of times this year, especially early, when I've talked about this and I said, this is the key. Watch when this lights up and we see these systems start to bundle that energy, then we know that things are getting ready to take off. And that's what we're seeing here. 99L are soon to be 90L. And again, it's not showing up on some of the guidance maps as 90L. Maybe it is, I don't know. But you can clearly see it's bundling that energy there. And that is a big key to this whole process, that the energy is not spread out or diffuse, that it's actually starting to bundle it. And we're noticing that here on the vorticity signature chart, from the University of Wisconsin. So let's take a close-up look at 99L. And boy, I got to tell you, if we speed this up, this is pretty close to being a tropical depression. Why, what's the deal with that? What makes it a depression? Well, it's got to have closed rotary circulation all throughout the system in all the quadrants. We have that clearly. That's very evident just by looking at the satellite picture from the cloud shot. We also have what's called scatterometer data, where a satellite will pass over overhead, and if it catches the path of this, it can see the motion of some of the rain, and it gets a vector from that, and you get what are called wind flags, and you can kind of see it through the rain blowing around, and you get an idea of the wind from the rain. It's pretty amazing how they do that, I believe using microwave frequencies. And that also shows a very tight circulation in here. It's got pretty good banding overall, especially connected down here to the intertropical convergent zone, kind of like an umbilical cord right here, feeding deep moisture up into this system, because the dry air is right up here. It's close, okay? But it's not so close that, again, this is breathing in, and that's the convection that we see. And it's not very deep convection. I mean, come on, it's only July 21st. Still have a ways to go, but this is really impressive for this time of year, and this is what is so important. I believe, looking at the guidance, looking at what we got right in front of us, that this will go on to develop, if not 5 p.m. today, then certainly by 11 o'clock tonight, I would think, unless something crazy happens and it just fizzles. This will be our next tropical depression and probably our next tropical storm, and if so, the name will be Gonzalo. If that happens, where this is located, out in the Atlantic here, we'll go to this image, that's pretty far east there for this time of year, right around 40, 41 degrees west longitude at the time being. That's one of those signals I've been talking about. You've seen my past videos over the last month here, well, 20 days or so, 21 days here in July. In July, if you have development out this way, it's usually a very big sign for what's coming. Phil Klotzbach had a tweet today kind of alluding to this. It's not the key factor, but it's definitely a big signal, especially if it keeps happening. And we got that one there, 99L. We got the one coming off Africa. And when I show you the modeling, I said if we get between 1 and 3, and especially that high end, 3, the chances of a very hyperactive season go way up, in my opinion. That's just been my experience. And I think that's what we're starting to see here. I think we're going to get 2. This is going to be 1. I believe this is going to be 2. And we're going to have to really watch these because there's probably going to be some impacts. All right, so there's the close-up of it. Got time to watch. Now, let's look at this from the modeling perspective, and let me set this up before we get started. We're going to examine the global forecast system, that's the GFS. We're going to also examine the ECMWF, also known as the Euro. 2 very well-respected, decent computer models, what we call part of the national weather, numerical weather prediction from the National Weather Service, that's the GFS, and the European model is run from a consortium of countries from Europe. All right, so we're going to look at the layer of the atmosphere that's about 5,000 feet up. This layer, roughly, right here, the vorticity layer. Well, you can see vorticity at any layer, really, but this is my favorite layer. This is not necessarily how you're supposed to do it. I'm saying, like, at the National Hurricane Center, I don't know how they do it. This is how Mark does it. This is what I look at. Because at the 5,000 foot level, or 850 millibars in the atmosphere, it's all about height, and if you fly planes, you know all about that, the altimeter settings. If the structure is good at 5,000 feet, then it's probably going to be good going up. You know what I mean? That's the basis. And if it looks structurally sound at this level, that's the starting point. And the more structurally sound it is, the more potent it usually is in real life. Does that make sense? I think it'll make sense as we follow along here together and see what happens. So let's get our bearings as to what's what. West coast of Africa here. East coast of North America over here. The islands of the Caribbean right there. Trinidad and Tobago down here. There's Barbados. There, that little tiny system. Yeah, that's it. That's all it is. That's the reflection in the modeling, the model guidance. It's all math and physics, right? That's what it looks like. So let's move this out. This is the GFS. We'll go out 24 hours, okay? So there we are, 24 hours out. Still just a little dark red area down there, still well east of the islands. You can see it right there. Circle it for you. There's the system, nice sharp wave showing up better now. in the modeling in the Gulf. And yes, we're watching this as well. A little bit more energy with it, but not much fanfare overall. All right, let's go out another 24 hours. This is 48. And a couple things to note. This system, very well round, but small. The trade surge to the north of it with the Saharan air layer trying to get it. And if it expands or gets more north, it's probably going to, ingest that dry air, and then it's game over. It'll collapse. But the GFS isn't seeing that. It's seeing it staying fairly intact. There's our Gulf system. This is Thursday morning. Let's move out to Friday morning, all right? 24 more hours, 72 hours out into the future. Here's Friday morning, our Gulf system coming in towards the northwest part of the Gulf. An increase in organization, showers, thunderstorms, gusty winds, heavy rainfall, yes. Hurricane, tropical storm, no, I don't think so. Maybe it becomes a tropical storm. I'll say, maybe on that, but other than that, not a big problem, and maybe some more needed rain, as long as it's not too much. What would probably be in the modeling here, Gonzalo looks really potent there, relatively speaking, all right? It's intact. Small, very small. And let me tell you something about small. This global model, the resolution of the GFS and the Euro, to pick out a tiny little system like that. We talked about this in a previous Hurricane U episode. Search that on my YouTube channel. In fact, I'll put a link in today's description. Just thinking about it. To the Hurricane U, it's an educational series we've done, where we had Jack Sillin from the weathermodels.com site talking about computer models and the resolution. For the global model, which is a powerful system, to see this tiny little feature and resolve it and indicate that much bundling of the energy down there, that tells me we got to really watch this, especially if you're in the Windward Islands. All right, so let's move on out to 96 hours. And there it is, moving north of Trinidad and Tobago, through the Windward Islands there, into the Windward Islands. You got to watch this closely. And then by day 5, which is as far out as we're going to go, into the Eastern Caribbean this goes. And from there, we'll just have to wait and see. Usually through here, these systems tend to accelerate. There's other factors with the way the winds blow through here. This is a graveyard. Unless it's a hurricane already, and a small system like this probably isn't going to survive much into the Caribbean, but you never know. All right, so that's the GFS. What about the Euro? Same area of the atmosphere, 850 millibars, 5,000 feet. This is the analysis right there. There's the system resolved very well. The envelope of energy coming off Africa, our system in the Gulf. That's the players we're looking at. All right, this is every 24 hours. This is the way it is on the publicly available, courtesy of Tropical Tidbits today. So we move it out 24 hours. And the Euro as well, keeping this very much intact. Here's the energy coming off Africa, much larger envelope there, probably more moisture now. And there's our system in the Gulf. 24 hours later, so 48 hours into the future. This is Thursday morning, and let's move on out to Friday morning. By Friday, the Euro starts to lose the system here, amplifies this a little bit more, and is trying to develop this one a little bit more. So that's 72 hours out. 96 hours, not much reflection with 99L. There's the system over Texas, the one coming off Africa, and then another system, and then another one behind that. Wow. Here we go. It's not even August yet. So one more time here at one more date, 120 hours out. Interesting that the Euro amplifies this system over Texas. Not much with this one in the Caribbean, not much with that. Now it's trying to develop this. And you can go and look at it yourself and see what happens. Yes, there's more coming in the pipeline. Bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, we definitely need to be watching what is soon to be TD number 7 or 8 or whatever it is. 99L, probably going to be Gonzalo at some point. I think there's a decent chance of impacts to the Windward Islands. Rain, heavy rain, gusty winds, maybe tropical storm conditions at around day 4 or so. So we still have about 4 days to watch it. As for the Gulf system, I'm not that worried about it. Minimal impacts overall, rainfall, maybe some onshore flow, which the Gulf of Mexico, of course, you get some storm surge from that. I mean, just blowing water, you blow on the surface of water, that's storm surge, believe it or not. But I'm not very concerned about the system in the Gulf, at least not yet. A couple things coming up to let you know about. Friday, I'm getting on a plane, and before you go, there's ways to do stuff, you just have to be safe about it. I'm getting on a plane and I'm going to Arizona. The active monsoon is in swing, and I'm going to go out and study and observe that, and I'm going to take a couple of GoPros with me. Our patrons have been very, very generous to provide, forgot to get my prop, these new 360 cameras from GoPro. It's called the GoPro Max, and I want to do some 360 testing while I'm out there. I want to fly the quadcopter, the drone as it's called. I got a nice Mavic drone that I want to fly. And there's some burn scars out there from some previous wildfires. And it all relates to my interest in weather, impactful weather, geography, geomorphology, climate. That's all in my wheelhouse. And thanks to our patrons, that right down there, it says supported by our patrons, they are making this possible. So I'm going to head out to Arizona on Friday. I'll be back Monday. I'll be taking the laptop with me, of course. I'll be doing these updates. No worries about that. So no, I will not be going to Texas. And, even if it becomes a named storm for Texas, a little bit of it's not going to cause evacuations. There's a lot of people in Southeast Texas vacationing. And Arizona's a little bit more open. And I do need to, I know you're like, well, you're getting on a plane, but on a plane I'm going to be wearing a mask. And I just, I think Arizona's going to be safer. I'm going to be out away from Phoenix and all that. Don't worry. But this system approaching the Texas coast, we know there's going to be bigger systems coming, put it that way. And I want to focus my attention while the monsoon is happening on that. And so I'm not going to worry too much. And put it this way, if Mark's not going to Texas, you don't have to, it's not too much of a concern. If it was going to be a hurricane, of course, I would certainly be there because those have usually the biggest impact. Anyhow, that's my plans. That's coming up on Friday. I'll talk about it some more, probably on Thursday, and outline exactly what I'm looking to do. Several people have joined Patreon in the last couple of days. If you're interested in that, there's a lot of benefits to joining up. It's not a subscription service where you pay money and then you get something. It's a cooperative. It's a crowdfunding effort that is making things happen. That's the way you need to look at it. And it's, from the $1 to the $100 level, there's plenty for everybody on there, a lot of benefits. And check it out. I'll put the link in every one of these videos. And as I said, don't forget, I will put the link to the Jack Sillin Hurricane U episode that we did talk about computer models several weeks ago. All right? So that's it from me for now. As things get busy, I will be doing 2 updates a day, maybe even starting tomorrow. We'll see. A morning update where we go over the evening models, the overnight models, and an afternoon update where we will go over the morning guidance. That's how it's going to be from here on out. So subscribe, speaking of subscriptions, to my YouTube channel, and you get notifications when I do an update. And just so you know, too, when I do these updates, I put them on Patreon first. And then about 20 minutes later, I make them publicly available. Just a little bit of inside info for you there. If you're thinking about joining Patreon, maybe that'll put you over the top. You get access to it first there. Just a little bit of the perks. Hey, look, thanks for your support no matter how you're doing it. I do appreciate it. And it all matters. I am Mark Suttoth for HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back with much more for you tomorrow.